Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Maighstir Tarot. Thank you for joining me again today. A little bit warmer today. The polar blast breeze has stopped, so hopefully get out in the garden. Thank you for joining me, and thank you so much for your feedback in regards to my reading last week in regards to my spiritual path and how to engage yours. Maighstir actually wanted me to do a little bit of a follow-up, so I'll hopefully not be too long on this one. He wanted me to use a couple of stories and anecdotes to get across what he is trying to say in regards to discovering your own spirituality and different ways you can do so, and some of the barriers that you can find, especially when you're talking amongst your group of like-minded people. First of all, what he wanted to say is that when he gives me a hug, and even though I go, oh, isn't it lovely, he's not giving me a bear hug. Oh, goodness sakes, he's a Celtic warrior, for crying out loud. He puts his hands on my shoulders and he just gives me an inward squeeze. A squeeze like that, just to show his form of affection. Now, I was told by Judy, who was my tarot teacher, and now we're extremely good friends. And I still do have readings with Judy. She will read me probably once every 6 months, just so that I'm open and aware of what I need to, because what you'll find as a tarot reader or a spiritual reader of any sort, trying to read on yourself is near on impossible because of the biases that you are bringing in, of the what I would like to happen, and just subconscious undercurrents. So I go to Judy for a reading about every 6 months. And when she first introduced me to Maighstir, and as I explained last time, his name is Angus, she can visually see what they look like. And what she told me is that he looks like a young Mel Gibson. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Mel Gibson, but if you Google Mel Gibson Thunderdome, I think that's what she was getting at. However, I do prefer Eric Bana. Eric Bana's my little squeeze, so my poster on the wall, so to speak. So if you Google Eric Bana, you'll get an idea of what he actually looks like. I do not see him. I have not seen him. I can look at a picture of what he may look like, but it means nothing to me. I feel him spiritually, I feel him physically, and I can also hear him. Others can't, but I can hear him as clear as day, and sometimes he just does a download dump on me. Now, what I wanted to talk about today was more on the path of my spiritual journey, and hopefully you will get something out of that as well. A couple of stories I wanted to share. Now, I think I mentioned last time that I do see soul crossings. I had the most beautiful experience, and I did put a video on this in regards to, so just before Christmas of last year, 2021, down in Tasmania in a place called Devonport, during a last day of school fun day, a jumping castle rose into the air and several children fell off and were killed. Without even knowing any detail about that, I experienced the soul crossing of 2 of those children. One of them in particular really struck me because it was a young boy. I don't know which of the young boys it was, because to me it was so personal, but it was also such an honour to be there that I really don't feel that I want to or need to delve into the detail of who he was. He was a young boy. He was sobbing in this place that I see, if I call it a cavern or an arena, it's not really, it's like a cave, but it's a cave on end, where the walls, they look like ice, so they're semi-transparent, but they're not cold to the touch, so it's almost like an ice-like resin with a hard-packed floor. The soul that is in can see out, but those that are out cannot see in. And what usually happens is I see the family and friends or whomever on the outside during this transition period. Now, so there was this young lad sitting in the middle of this cavern, knees up, arms round his knees, crying his eyes out at the distress of it. And his family. Now, I saw it was a woman with another child. I didn't see a father figure there. I saw the woman and a child on the outside crying as well. And what happened then, and the family dog was on the outside with the woman and child. And what happened then is then the spirit of the dog passed through into this cavern and nuzzled the boy, as dogs do, because they know when you're upset, nuzzled the boy and just gave all its love to this little boy. The young lad then cuddled the dog, arms round it, head burrowed into the fur, and he then he felt all this love, and he felt that it was then time. So he then sent the dog back to the family with his love for the family, and he requested, what's the word? Maighstir, I can't think of the word. He sent the dog back to take his love back to comfort the family. And then when the dog went back and he then saw, or the spirit of the dog went back, and then the woman and the sibling were cuddling the dog in a similar manner, the young fella knew that it was going to be okay, so he ascended. So I just want to experience what I actually see, so that if you are getting something similar, the big thing is not to be afraid of it. Definitely don't be afraid. So that was one experience I've had. Another one these are all in the last 12 months. Once I learnt how to open up to spirit and embrace it and not be afraid of it. It's very much about, these experiences will come to you when you embrace what is happening to you. You'll probably experience them in a different manner than I will. But what I'm trying to get across is that once you open yourself up to this whole realm of spiritual vibration and just allow it to flow, you will find these sorts of experiences happening to you, and it's very important that you just accept it. Put your protection around you so you don't get these mischievous spirits coming in, which I've had, and oh my goodness, I had on one occasion, and I had to almost physically pull them out and throw them away. They're not evil, they're just mischievous, but they can feel. So just be aware, put your protection around you, but also just embrace. Now, another experience I had that I wanted to share was a young lass called Mary Poole. Now, how did this come about? I have a friend who does not believe in spirituality and ghosts, or didn't, and she was staying at a old convict times homestead about 2 hours drive away from us. It's in a rural area. It was a wealthy manor, or still is a wealthy manor, but when it was of its time, it had an extremely wealthy family in situ. Now, when she was staying there, she was staying in a particular room, and when she stays there, she stayed in this particular room, and both times at 5 o'clock in the morning, for absolutely no reason. She was woken, and when she woke up, she says she distinctly heard a voice say, "It is time to get up." Now, when she sort of really looked around, turned the light on, there was nobody there. So the fact that this happened twice made her go, "Oh, okay." So she was telling me about it because she knows that I embrace this sort of thing, and she was very uncertain. And I thought, how fascinating. So I started investigating who this young person may be. Talked to Judy, my teacher, about it, and really opened myself up to the messages that this particular spirit, because obviously it was still around, wanted us to know. Haven't been there, haven't met her, but really opened myself up to it. Now, it was obviously a domestic servant. It was obviously young, because the housekeeper or the cook, etc., would not be going around waking up the other staff members. That was the job of the younger domestic servant. Now, for a young female domestic servant to be in the house, Judy got the distinct impression that she worked with the children of the household in some form. Helped out in the nursery or something like that. So that started my investigation, and so I started looking through the ancestry to see who was in residence, who had young children, at what stage, and went through the whole process. The homestead and its surrounding farming properties had owned at that stage by only two families. One moved in the, I think it was 1850-ish. I do have the correct dates, I just can't think of them off the top of my head. And after about 20 years, 25 years, it was on sold to the second family. The second family were the only ones in the entire history of that homestead that had young children, and therefore a nursery situation in the house. So I then started looking into who was on staff in the house at that time, and I was really, really drawn to, so I knew it was a young female. I knew she must work in the house and domestic staff, and I was really drawn to following the family histories of a particular convict who was brought to the property by the second owner, and his surname, I think his name was William Poole, Poole. He was brought as a general labourer to the property. He worked himself to a position of head gardener. He had married. I can't find any history on his wife, but I can find William Poole's history. He was sent over for stealing, I believe. I do have it all written down. This is quite a while ago. And him and his wife had 3 children, the oldest of which was Mary Poole, born in 1860, on the property. So going through Ancestry.com or a similar site, she also had 2 younger brothers. Both died before they were the age of 5. So talking to Mary, so I opened myself up right up, and I threw the cards to say, "Are you Mary? Have I got this right?" And Ace of Swords. I mean, you can't argue with the Ace of Swords. Damn straight, I had that right. So I was chatting to a couple of days later. I was trying to find out about Mary, and I was chatting to her in my head a day or so later while I was cooking dinner, and I asked her what happened to her, and I just suddenly felt like I was on fire, like I was burning up with fever. I was apparently it was cool, but I was flinging clothes off. I was so hot, burning up with fever, and then it passed after a minute or so. So I realised that she must have died of fever. This was actually, sorry, before I worked out it was Mary, I asked her who was she and what happened to her, and got the fever, and therefore that led me in some ways to Mary, because I then started looking at the young women who had died on the property. And Mary had died at the age of 20 from consumption, which is also known as TB. She'd suffered from TB for about 2 years, from what the historical documents tell us, and then she died in a state of fever. So her parents were left childless. Her parents lived, so she died in 1880. Her parents lived another 20 years or so before they passed, but all their children had predeceased them, which is incredibly sad. So I then twigged that it was this, she died of a fever. The timing was spot on for there being children in the house, and her working as a domestic in the nursery. I then contacted the local, up the valley, a couple hours up the valley, the local historical society, and said, this is going to sound really weird, but do you have any information? And they came back and they were so enthusiastic and encouraging, and they said, yes, we do. Here is the newspaper clipping. It was a tiny little segment in the newspaper at that time, reporting her death and the cause of death. They sent me a copy of her death certificate. My gosh. And they also sent me a copy of her headstone, of where she's buried up there. And once I had all that information, it was pages and pages of information, put it together, and I just felt this incredible, she was so relieved that somebody now knew her story. Somebody knew who she was, because it's these ordinary people of the day that their stories get lost. They live, they love, they laugh, they cry, they suffer, they have huge highs and huge lows, but their story is usually lost. And she was so relieved, and she let me know that she was so, just deep breath out, that her story was out there of who she was. She wasn't forgotten. I did ask her a couple of days later, I was throwing some cards, and asked her how she felt about her early passing. And I got great sadness, but the great sadness was at the fact that at the age of 20, she left behind her beau. She was in love and was loved by a young man who worked in, I got horses with him. Horses, he worked in the stables. He was possibly a strapper or a groom or a labourer again, but that was her greatest disappointment, was that she left the love of her life. I haven't been able to find anything on him, but what I did find interesting was I then researched the actual property itself, about its connection to horses, and it turned out the property was a carriage horse stud. So it would breed breed and train top quality carriage horses for the Sydney and Melbourne markets. So that sort of tied it up very neatly. Sorry, I've just got chills up my legs right now. But this is the message that I'm trying to get by sharing this story, is that once you open yourself up, thank you, Maighstir, once you open yourself up, the possibilities where your engagement with your spirituality can take you are just beautiful. They are wonderful to experience. They can give you so much joy, and although I was in tears about Mary's story when I was with her, and her loss and her sadness and the way she went, she was so grateful that she had actually been remembered and had been heard. And the the overwhelming lightness and love and warmth that I felt once I put all the pieces together was just beautiful. So needless to say, I put all the paperwork together with all the family trees and the certificates and the newspaper clippings and the background story quite clinically, and gave it to my friend, and hopefully she has passed it on. But yeah, it was just the most amazing story. So this is just what Maighstir is wanting me to get across to you, is that by opening up and embracing it may be uncomfortable, but the glory you get from it, the satisfaction, the light you get from it is far outweighs anything else. The second story I wanted to share is that I'm going to be fairly general in here just in case it might trigger a few raw nerves or anything like that. But a big lesson that I have learnt over this journey as well is that you will encounter people who want you to read for them, to read on them, whether it's family or friends, or you're doing it for business or whatever. And there you will always come across those who try and twist what Spirit is telling them, whether it be via by the cards or by channeling or whatever it is, who will not be accepting for what is actually being told. And I've come across this a couple of times where someone will ask me a question, I'll read the cards that gives them the clearest answer, but it is not the answer they want. So therefore they may ask the question again, or they ask down the track, a couple of weeks or months or whatever down the track, or they'll ask it in a different way, or they will sit there while you're reading it and say, oh, well, no, it means, whatever else, because the message that is coming through from Spirit makes them feel uncomfortable, or is not the answer that they're wanting, whether it's in regards to a relationship or and regardless of with that relationship, whether it's a positive reading or a negative reading or a warning or well, this is what you need to do, because people don't like being told that perhaps they need to adjust themselves, whether it's in regards to asset sales or past history that is being brought forward, ancestral history that is being brought forward, or just in regards to their jobs or their futures or whatever. The messages that are being brought forward, and that's why I'm very, it's not me telling you when I'm reading the cards, it is me interpreting what the spirits are telling you via me. So you will come across those that, and I don't know whether some of you are like that as well, but they may find that the message that is coming through is uncomfortable. And you just need to let it go. You cannot convince people. You can lead them to water, but you cannot make them drink. But this is also a warning to you as spiritual people and potentially readers and guides and channelers of the future, is that you need to let go and try not to put your own views onto the reading. You need to let go and let the actual reading speak, and then leave it out there in the universe to either, for those that are ready, will take the message, those that aren't ready will try and convert it into something that makes them feel secure in where they are at this stage. So I know I'm being very general here. I will use an example of about 6 months ago. A colleague came to me about a property sale. The house was not selling. They wanted to know why it wasn't selling. I gave them advice on why it wasn't selling. And they basically said, no, according to those cards, because they were all pentacle cards, the house will sell as it is. And I'm trying to tell them that pentacles don't necessarily mean money coming in, a sale. But they didn't want to hear that. And 6 months later, the house still hasn't sold. So you just got to take it. You just got to take it as it is and let it be. If people are ready for the message, they will take it in. If they're not ready, they will push back. Okay, but the big thing on that was the fact of a position. You need to open yourself up, accept the messages that you are getting. They are what they are. Sit in them. They may not be particularly comfortable, or they might be incredibly joyous. Nothing is set in stone. This is just the messages are simply guidance, but perhaps also a bit of a warning about what path you may have to adjust or take. So take from that what you need to. Right, I'm just going to throw a couple of quick intuition cards. Thank you, Maighstir. A couple of very quick intuition cards about what Maighstir wants to tell you in regards to what I shared today. I'm trying not to make this too long, and I hope I haven't bored you to death. I just found all those stories incredibly from a observer's point of view, incredibly fascinating, but it is to encourage you that these may be methods that Spirit comes through to you. Be open to all and everything. Be open to all and everything and all the different paths that your spirit guide might be trying to connect with you. There is no one way, there is no right way. It is very personal, and it is a connection that you and your spirit guides will work out together. But you do need to listen to them. You do need to listen. Early days, Maighstir used to speak very forcefully at me because I wasn't listening. I was trying to put my own slant on things when I was learning, and I am finding that I am encountering people who are determined to put their own slant on the message, and therefore the messages aren't getting through. So just be aware, but also the fact I love this ancestry thing. I loved communing with Mary Poole. I loved finding out who she was, what her life was full of, what she loved. I cried with her at her death, and I feel so blessed to have been part of her journey. So you can use your talents, your gifts, in all these ways for people past and present, and there is no limit to what you can do. Oh, I've got a card flipped over here, and I think this is just the message that Maighstir wants for me, so I shall find it. Where is this card? Where is it, Maighstir? Because it really sums up 100% the message that he wants. Oh, there's two that have flipped over. The message that he wants to get through today is that let yourself free, let yourself ride the currents, and it will bring you abundance beyond your imagination. Ride the currents, listen to the message, go with the flow, let yourself free, let yourself embrace, and you will find a light and spiritual and warmth and fulfilling abundance beyond your wildest dreams. Okay, thank you for joining me today. Oh gosh, love and light to you all. Any questions, pop them below or email me, and I would love to hear your stories. So thank you, and I shall catch you tomorrow. Take care. Love to you all.